She stepped into the cathedral not with flowers, but with a worn-out teddy bear in her arms. No one looked her way at first. All eyes were on the bride. But then the girl moved forward, steady and alone, and said one sentence that made the entire wedding freeze. A child's voice, trembling, yet sharper than any silence. Something wasn't right, and everyone felt it. If you believe that sometimes the people we overlook see the clearest stick around, like subscribe or leave a thought. Some truths need more than volume. They need someone to listen. The Carter estate in Pacific Heights glittered with soft chandeliers and the clink of champagne flutes. It was the kind of evening tailored for lifestyle magazine's curated florals, a live quartet tucked into the corner, and a guest list full of venture capitalists, former senators, and people who only answered to titles. James Carter, founder of ClearLink Systems and one of San Francisco's most eligible bachelors, was glowing. He held the waist of Vanessa Moore, the woman everyone believed had finally cracked the code to his guarded heart. Vanessa smiled with a practiced grace, nodding to every compliment as if she'd already memorized her role. The diamond on her finger caught the light at every angle, casting tiny stars across the marble floor. She moved effortlessly through conversations, never letting anyone too close, yet never far enough to seem distant. Every detail was polished, except for one thing. Emily stood quietly near the grand piano, away from the crowd, her arms wrapped around a worn-out teddy bear that once belonged to her mother. She didn't touch the fruit punch the server had brought her. She didn't laugh when Mr. Hollander from Carter's board tried to make a joke about kids hating grown-up parties. Her eyes were fixed, unblinking, on Vanessa. The grown-ups saw a shy child. What they didn't see was the way Emily had been watching Vanessa all week, noting the way she avoided answering simple questions, how she always kept her phone tucked beneath her clutch, and how she flinched ever so slightly when James mentioned his late wife. James was too busy shaking hands to notice. Vanessa leaned in to whisper something into his ear, then excused herself. Emily's feet moved before her mind could decide. She followed. The hallway was darker, quieter. Vanessa walked quickly, her heels making a dull rhythm against the marble. Emily stopped just before the corner, holding her breath as Vanessa answered a call. "I said Sunday. Everything's ready. He trusts me. That's all we need." Her voice was different, lower, clipped, like someone who no longer needed to pretend. Emily's fingers clutched the bear tighter. A moment later, Vanessa turned, adjusting the strap of her dress. She saw Emily, standing still at the edge of the hallway, half lit by the glow of the sconce. Her eyes narrowed, not in fear, not in surprise, but calculation. Then she smiled, not a warm smile, not a mother's smile, just enough curve to show she wasn't startled. "Sweetheart, are you lost?" she asked. Emily didn't answer. She didn't run either. Vanessa's heels clicked softly as she walked past the girl, brushing her shoulder slightly, whispering, "Let's not wander off alone again." "Okay," and just like that, she disappeared back into the glow of the party, her laughter rising again, as though nothing had happened. Emily didn't return to the piano. She stood in the hallway for a long time, staring at where Vanessa had stood. Her thumb rubbed a thread loose from the bear's back. Her heart was loud in her ears. No one else had heard. No one else had looked. She didn't cry, but she didn't blink either. She didn't move until she saw her father raise a toast, his voice filled with hope for a new beginning. She didn't look away, but something inside her had already shifted. The walls of Lincoln Heights Elementary School were painted in fading pastels, lined with finger-painted projects and motivational posters that hadn't been changed in years. It was a public school tucked behind a stretch of apartment buildings in northeast San Francisco, the kind of school where nobody donated new iPads and parent-teacher conferences were squeezed between double shifts and borrowed time. Emily sat in the beige chair across from Principal Rosario's desk, her small hands folded over her knees. She stared at the laminated nameplate, refusing to make eye contact. Next to her on the desk was the drawing: a woman in a long, white dress, standing beside a blazing fire, eyes drawn with thick black circles, smile slashed too wide. The flames reached the edge of the page, devouring everything, except the woman's untouched figure. Principal Rosario cleared her throat. "Emily, this kind of drawing, it's a little troubling. Don't you think?" she asked gently. "Do you want to talk about what it means?" Emily shook her head. "Is it Vanessa?" the principal pressed. "Your father's fiancée." Still no answer, just a slight tightening of Emily's shoulders. Rosario sighed and leaned back. "You're a very bright girl, but maybe next time, let's draw something happier, something that doesn't worry your teachers." "All right," Emily only nodded once. When James Carter arrived 15 minutes later, he looked entirely out of place. His charcoal suit, pressed and perfect, stood out in the dim corridor lined with vending machines and flickering lights. The receptionist had offered him coffee, which he politely declined, then smiled the whole walk to the principal's office like he was on the board of the school, not just the parent of a third grader. Rosario greeted him with the usual pleasantries, then explained the concern. "It's probably nothing, Mr. Carter. But we thought you should know. Emily's teacher says she's been distracted, hesitant to engage, and this drawing, it felt off." James crouched down to Emily's level and rested his hand gently on her shoulder. "Is something going on, Peanut?" he asked. "Are you nervous about the wedding?" Emily stared at the floor. "She'll get used to you," James later told Vanessa over the phone, while Emily sat quietly in the back seat on the way home. "She just needs time. She's still adjusting. I mean, it's been, 2 years since—" He didn't finish the sentence. Vanessa's voice came softly through the car speaker. "Of course. I understand. I'll do my best to be patient with her." In the rearview mirror, James saw Emily resting her forehead against the window. She didn't look up. The silence settled into the car like fog, thick, still, and hard to see through. That night, Emily sat at her desk, pulling open her pink school bag with slow, deliberate hands. She removed the original drawing that had gotten her called in. This copy didn't have red crayon flames. Instead, she'd shaded everything in gray pencil: the woman in the center, faceless now, surrounded by shadows that reached inward. She folded the paper once, then twice, and slipped it into the bottom drawer of her desk. She placed her teddy bear on top of it and zipped the drawer shut. At dinner, she said nothing. Vanessa had cooked pasta, Emily's favorite, but she pushed it around her plate until it clumped together. Her father kept glancing between them, trying to fill the space with questions about school and basketball practice, but Emily's voice didn't come. After the meal, when James was in the study taking a call and Emily was brushing her teeth, Vanessa leaned against the bathroom doorway. She didn't step in. "I want us to be friends, Emily," she said. Her voice was low, almost soothing. "But if you keep trying to scare people with those pictures, well, I'm not sure your father will understand." Emily froze. Her toothbrush paused midair. Vanessa smiled and turned away, calling out, "Good night, sweetie." In the dim light of the hallway, her silhouette drifted past like smoke. Later that evening, James received a text on his phone. It read, "I think we need to talk about your daughter. She might need help." He stared at it for a long time, unsure what part of him started to doubt first. She didn't hear what he whispered into the dark, but something in the house grew quieter. The last school bell of the week rang across Lincoln Heights Elementary, scattering children into the courtyard like wind-blown leaves. Emily sat on a bench at the edge of the parking lot, her backpack resting on the ground, legs swinging in place. Most of the other kids were already gone. Her father was late again. A breeze swept through the chain-link fence that lined the lot, stirring the scent of concrete and car exhaust. Emily kept her eyes on the sidewalk ahead, but something shifted in her periphery. A black Lexus with tinted windows pulled in and slowed to a crawl just before the school's front steps. It wasn't her father's car. It was newer, sleeker, with license plates she didn't recognize. The rear passenger door opened first. Vanessa stepped out, her hair tied back in a tight bun, heels sharp against the pavement. She didn't notice Emily. She didn't look at the school. From the driver's side, a man emerged. He was tall, lean, with a charcoal gray suit and mirrored sunglasses. He didn't hesitate, didn't scan the area. He walked straight to Vanessa, and she to him. They met at the hood of the car. Their hands touched first. Then he leaned in, and they kissed, slowly, like no one was watching, or like they didn't care who might be. Emily didn't breathe. Her heart caught in her throat. She reached for her backpack, fumbling through it for the school-issued tablet she never used for anything serious. The camera app opened slowly, the frame shaky in her hands. She managed one shot, blurry, crooked, but enough. She captured the man's face just as he turned toward her direction. His sunglasses reflected nothing. His jawline looked like it had been carved from stone. They didn't see her. Not then. Not yet. Emily slid off the bench and crouched low, her legs trembling. She backed into the shadows near the bike racks, waiting until the Lexus pulled away. Vanessa didn't glance back. At home, she said nothing during dinner. James was distracted, answering texts between bites of stir-fried rice. Vanessa was unusually quiet, her tone too sweet, like overripe fruit. When James left the table to take a call, Vanessa leaned across the island and asked if Emily had a good day at school. Emily nodded, eyes fixed on the leftover soy sauce ring on her plate. She felt like her voice didn't live in her anymore. Later that night, when the house had settled and the lights dimmed, Emily locked her bedroom door and turned on her laptop. She slid the photo from the tablet to her inbox, then opened a browser and typed in everything she could remember about the car: black Lexus, chrome trim, dealer plate holder from Fremont. It wasn't much, but the internet made up for what she lacked. After an hour, she found it. Brandon Reed, once linked to a series of financial scams in the Los Angeles area. Multiple aliases, no convictions, no mugshots, just a grainy image from a news article buried in the archives of a local paper. But it was him. She clicked on the article, reading every word. Securities fraud, false identity. The article called him a person of interest in the sudden disappearance of a former client. He'd vanished before charges could be filed. That was 3 years ago. Emily's fingers hovered over the keyboard. Her mind churned, connecting the dots that adults would have brushed off. Vanessa wasn't just lying. She was dangerous, and her father was blind to it. She opened the drawer beneath her bed, the one with her mother's old belongings. Inside was the teddy bear she'd had since she was 5, the one her mother gave her after her last chemo round. She placed the photo printout in a Ziploc bag, sealed it, and tucked it behind the bear's back zipper, a makeshift safe. Her first secret. She didn't sleep much that night. Her thoughts spun fast and wild, not out of fear, but out of something sharper clarity. In the dark, she whispered the name aloud once, as if daring the room to echo it back. Brandon Reed. Then she rolled over and kept one eye on the crack beneath her bedroom door. She didn't move until morning light hit the bear's stitched eye, like it could see her too. Saturday mornings in the city moved slower, even near Civic Center, but inside the San Francisco Public Library, everything still hummed with quiet urgency. Emily stepped through the sliding glass doors and headed straight for the second floor, passing rows of adults who barely looked up from their screens. She moved like she had a plan. Her backpack was heavier today, not from books, but from the tension pulling down her shoulders. She chose the far left terminal in the back, where the corner walls dimmed the glare from overhead lights. She pulled the photo from her tablet, Brandon's blurred face, half turned, but sharp enough for her. With a deep breath, she uploaded it to a parent-run forum called Safe Families. Now, it was a quiet corner of the internet where strangers flagged potential threats, traded tips about local scams, and sometimes rarely told the truth. She typed a caption under the photo. Does anyone recognize this man? He was seen near Lincoln Heights Elementary yesterday. Her fingers hovered before hitting post. Then she clicked, and the screen blinked once, then settled. Minutes passed. She kept refreshing. Nothing. The second hand on the wall clock scratched forward. A reply appeared from a user named Fresno Mom, 72. He looks a lot like someone I saw near Lake Merritt last year with a woman who called herself Vanessa Hill. Be careful. Emily blinked. Vanessa Hill. She read the message again, letting each word take hold. It felt like a key had turned just enough to unlock the suspicion she hadn't been able to name. Her chest tightened, but not in fear. It was clarity again, the same cold stillness that had settled in her bones when she first heard Vanessa's voice behind the hallway. She opened a new tab, searched the name Vanessa Hill. Too many hits, some real, most noise. But one entry caught her eye, a civil court record in Alameda County from 4 years ago. Defendant Vanessa Hill. No details, no conviction. Sealed. But it was there. She clicked back to the forum. No new messages. Still staring at the screen. She whispered the name again. Vanessa Hill. It didn't belong to the woman smiling in her father's photos, and that made it more real. From her backpack, she pulled out her small notebook and wrote the name down in pencil, just beneath it. She drew a rough outline of a bear. The bear had a zipper in its back. Only Emily knew what that meant. Her stomach growled, but she didn't feel hunger. When she got home, the house was quiet. James was out for a client meeting. Vanessa had left earlier with a comment about errands. Emily walked straight to her room, past the kitchen, past the living room, where family photos had started to include a woman who didn't belong. Her bedroom smelled like cedar from the closet. Her windows were closed, blinds drawn halfway. She froze at the door. The teddy bear was sitting on her pillow. She hadn't left it there. She walked slowly across the room, eyes on the bear. It looked untouched, but it was facing the wrong direction. She picked it up, turned it over. The zipper wasn't fully closed. Emily unzipped it. Slowly. Inside. The photograph and flash drive were still there. But something else had changed. Her drawing of the woman in flames was missing. Just gone. She sat down, bear in her lap, heart thudding. Her door had been locked. She'd checked. She always checked. She stared at the carpet, tracing the same spot with her toe. Someone had been here. Someone knew what she was doing. Her phone buzzed on the dresser. A new message. No name, no number. Just one line. Curiosity is dangerous when you're this young. She stared at the screen, then at the bear. She didn't cry. Instead, she turned off the phone, zipped the bear tight, and tucked it deep under the mattress. This time, she would remember every detail, every zipper, every crease, every sound. She didn't move for a while, but the silence in the room wasn't hers anymore. The penthouse apartment at the top of Carter Estate was a fortress of quiet, soaked in filtered light and muted decor. It overlooked the bay, with the kind of view only people with floor-to-ceiling windows ever had. James Carter called it his thinking space, though it was mostly unused, except for Zoom meetings and contract reviews. He had soundproofed the walls after Emily's mother passed, wanting silence he could control. It was that very silence Emily relied on now. She waited until she heard the low hum of her father's voice in the adjacent room, his weekly investor update, and crept barefoot across the hall. Her small fingers twisted the office doorknob until it gave with a faint click. She slipped in, closed it behind her, and turned the lock gently. The office smelled faintly of cedar and printer ink. Everything was in order, which made every step feel like an intrusion. The drawers in the file cabinet weren't locked. She pulled them open one by one, quickly but with care. Bank statements, tax returns, business contracts. Then, tucked into a manila folder labeled Personal, Prenuptial, she found a crisp stack of papers. The top page read, State of California Marriage License Application. Below it, 2 typed names. James Marshall Carter, Vanessa Rose Moore. She read the name twice. It was the same one on every RSVP, every announcement. But what caught her was the line beneath it, signature, the flourish at the end, the slant of the V. It wasn't just familiar, it was exact. Emily's breath snagged in her chest. She rushed back to her bedroom, heart thudding against her ribs, and pulled out the storage bin from under her bed. It took her 3 tries to unzip the side pocket of her old memory binder, something her mother used to keep school records, report cards, random keepsakes. Near the back was a form for early dismissal from 2nd grade. The reason was simple illness. The signature at the bottom wasn't her mother's. It was someone listed as authorized pickup, Vanessa Hill. Emily laid the 2 papers side by side on her rug, staring at the twin signatures like they might start to move on their own. The loops, the angle, the exact same upward flick on the last of... They were the same person. Her knees pressed against the carpet. She felt the burn of certainty sink in. Vanessa hadn't just entered their lives this year. She had been here before, hiding under another name, another role. And James never saw it. Her fingers trembled as she took a photo of both documents side by side, storing them in the locked album on her phone. She sat back, mind spiraling. Had Vanessa planned this for years? Had she targeted their family long before the engagement? Had she always known James would be vulnerable? Emily pressed her hands against her ears. For a moment, she let herself feel the cold, sharp edge of fear, not for herself, but for her father. He had let this woman into their home, into his heart, into their family photos, and she had done it with a name that wasn't even hers. Downstairs. James was still on the call. His voice filtered faintly through the floorboards. Words like acquisition and timeline meant nothing now. The world outside the office was still moving, and no one knew it was built on a crack. Her phone buzzed. She reached for it slowly. The screen showed a message from an unknown number. No contact, no name, just 10 words. You're a smart girl, but curiosity can get you hurt. Emily didn't breathe. She looked around her room, the corners, the window latch, the vent. Had someone been inside again? Her fingers closed around the phone, locking the screen, then turning it off completely. She slid it beneath her mattress, near the hidden pocket with her bear. She moved quietly to the window, opened it an inch, then closed it again just to hear the click of the lock. She sat in the center of the room, knees to chest. She didn't cry. Not this time. She didn't look out the window, but she felt the dark waiting on the other side of the glass. Sunday morning rolled in gray and quiet, like the city hadn't fully woken yet. The streets outside Marina View Senior Center were still slick from a night rain, and the fog hung low along the slope of the Richmond Hills. Emily sat in the back seat of the town car, holding the teddy bear in her lap, with both arms wrapped tight. She hadn't let go of it all morning. Her father had an early breakfast meeting downtown and had dropped her off at the front steps without a second glance. Evelyn Carter's room was on the 3rd floor, tucked away in a quiet corner that smelled of vanilla lotion and fresh laundry. Her walls were lined with photographs in silver frames, James as a boy, his late wife in graduation robes, a younger Evelyn holding a smiling toddler that was clearly Emily. The TV was off. Classical music played softly from a dusty speaker. Evelyn was seated in her armchair near the window, a thick book open but unread on her lap. Emily stepped inside, the bear still tucked close. "Hi, Grandma." Evelyn looked up slowly, eyes lighting with a mix of warmth and something more watchful. "Emily, sweetheart, that bear still following you everywhere?" Emily nodded and settled into the chair across from her. They talked for a bit about school, about the new art project she was pretending to care about, but Emily's fingers kept tugging at the back seam of the bear. Something felt wrong. The stitch line wasn't straight, the thread newer than it should have been. Her thumb found a small lump beneath the fur. She turned it over, dug gently with her nail, and felt the catch of a tiny zipper hidden where the original seam used to be. She froze. Then she pulled. Inside, tucked deep, was a micro SD card in a plastic sleeve. Evelyn blinked at it and leaned forward. "That's strange. I didn't put that in there." Emily's voice came quiet. "Do you remember where the bear came from?" Evelyn looked out the window, then slowly back to her granddaughter. "That used to be your mother's. She gave it to you the day she had to stay overnight at the hospital. She told me, if anything ever happened, to tell you to look inside." Emily swallowed. Her fingers tightened around the card. She knew Evelyn didn't answer that, but her eyes had turned sharp, sharper than they'd been in years. Later that afternoon, in the quiet of her room, Emily inserted the card into her laptop. A folder opened almost instantly, no password, no encryption, just names and dates. She clicked the first file, Vanessa Hill, laughing beside Brandon Reed in a hotel lounge in Manhattan, dated 2018. The next one, Austin, Texas, 2019. Same man, same woman, different identities on name badges, photos taken from odd angles, as if by someone following them. There were images of Brandon holding briefcases outside buildings Emily didn't recognize, Vanessa entering a bank under the name Elaine Matthews, car rentals, airport terminals. In one photo, they stood next to a Lexus, the same model, same license plate style as the one Emily saw in the school lot. She kept clicking, heart pounding harder with each frame. At the bottom of the folder sat a single PDF. She opened it. Insurance policy, James M. Carter beneficiary, Vanessa R. Moore, amount, 50,000 policy activated upon marriage. The letters swam in front of her eyes. Not a love story, not a future, a setup, one signed, sealed, and ready. Emily sat back, her breathing shallow. It wasn't just a lie anymore. It was a plan, a trap dressed in lace and handwritten vows. She copied the entire folder to a flash drive she kept for school. Then she erased the original from the computer, ejected the memory card, and placed it back inside the bear. But this time, she didn't zip it shut. She left it open, like a wound that no longer needed to be hidden. She thought of telling her father that night, but when she walked past his study, he was laughing on the phone, with Vanessa, her voice carrying through the door like sugar melting into air. Emily went back to her room. She placed the flash drive inside her math binder, between pages 82 and 83. No one checked those. She sat at her desk with the bear beside her. She didn't cry. She planned. She didn't turn off the lamp. Not because she was scared, but because the truth was finally bright enough to see. The sidewalks of North Beach carried a kind of old-world rhythm, where every cobblestone felt like it had a story. On this particular Thursday evening, the warm scent of garlic and baked ricotta drifted from Caseta di Milano, one of those places that didn't have a sign outside because the right people already knew it. Emily stood across the street, her back against a fire hydrant, hidden behind a parked SUV. She wore a navy hoodie that hung just past her knees, hair tucked under a baseball cap, the camera on her tablet preloaded and ready. Inside, through the large arched windows of the restaurant, golden light spilled across white tablecloths and polished silver. Vanessa sat at a booth in the back, laughing. Not the soft, poised laugh she used at charity galas or in front of James. This was louder, looser, real in a way that made Emily's stomach twist. Sitting across from her was Brandon Reed. He was older than most men in suits Emily had seen, but there was something too perfect about the way he leaned forward, like a mirror of trust. He knew how to wear. A half-full glass of Chianti between them. Vanessa touched his wrist when she laughed, their fingers intertwined casually. Emily inched forward, using the zoom function to catch their expressions. Brandon handed Vanessa a sealed white envelope. She slipped it into her purse without even glancing at it. Emily snapped a photo, then another. The door behind her opened suddenly. A waiter stepped out for a smoke and caught her crouched with the tablet in hand. "Hey, you can't do that here," he barked. Emily stood up quickly, heart hammering, and stammered, "I was just my mom's inside." "Don't lie," the man said, stepping off the stoop. "You're not even supposed to be on this side of the street with that thing." She backed away, tablet pressed tight to her chest. "I'm leaving." He pointed toward the corner. "Go." Now, Emily ran, turning sharply down the side alley behind the restaurant, heart pounding like it wanted to escape her ribs. Her shoes slapped against damp pavement. She didn't stop until she reached the back lot of a bookstore 2 blocks down. She crouched by a recycling bin, trying to catch her breath, in her earbuds. The audio recording app had picked up just enough before she was interrupted. Vanessa's voice. Faint, but clear. "No, the burner's in the bag." We switch motels Saturday night. I don't trust the front desk guy. She played it again. Burner. Switch motels. Saturday night. She stared at the waveform on her screen, knowing what it meant. They weren't just preparing for a wedding. They were preparing for an escape. Emily walked out toward Columbus Avenue slowly, phone still recording, unsure where to go next. She thought of calling her father, but she knew the voice on the other end would only say, you've got to stop this. The weight of that helplessness made her hands shake. She stepped around the corner of the building toward the main sidewalk, just as someone grabbed her wrist firm but not harsh. A woman, late 40s maybe, brown coat, knit scarf. Her grip was steady. I saw what you were doing, the woman said, voice low. I saw you outside Caseta. Emily froze. Her first instinct was to pull away, but the woman didn't tighten her grip. I'm not with them, the woman said, glancing down the block. But I know people who move like that. You're playing with fire. Emily didn't speak. The woman lowered her voice further, eyes narrowing. Be careful who you trust, kid. And don't go back there alone. Then, just as quickly as she'd appeared, the woman let go and stepped into the crowd, disappearing into a sea of leather jackets and umbrellas. Emily stood still. The streetlight above her flickered once, then glowed steady again. She didn't follow the woman, but she knew now she wasn't the only one watching. The doors of Grace Cathedral groaned open like the throat of some ancient stone animal, breathing in warmth, laughter, and too many silk flowers. It was Saturday evening, the final rehearsal before the wedding, one last orchestration of luxury before vows were said under the high Gothic arches. The nave glowed in amber candlelight, the floor polished to a quiet shine beneath pointed heels and polished loafers. A harpist strummed lightly in the background while wedding planners buzzed through pews, adjusting chairs and correcting floral arrangements that had already been corrected 3 times. Emily walked in through the side door, her backpack slung tighter than usual across both shoulders. Inside were neatly folded printouts, 3 thumb drives, and the micro SD card from the teddy bear, copied and hidden in 3 different formats. She'd written a letter, too, not to her father, but to the police, just in case. She'd considered handing it off to James during rehearsal dinner, but every time she approached, someone swept between them. James in conversation with the officiant, James adjusting his cufflinks with his best friend from Stanford, James toasting with a sommelier over a limited barrel of French white he would never drink but felt proud to serve. Emily tried again with the wedding planner, a brisk woman in a headset named Marla. Excuse me. Marla didn't glance down. Sorry, sweetheart. Not now. Do you need someone to help you find the bathroom? Emily's mouth opened, but the woman was already gone. She saw a uniformed officer near the side entrance, a church security detail, tall and older, standing just beyond the rose garden gate. Emily walked up to him slowly, hand in her pocket. Her fingers brushed the flash drive. Sir, she said. He turned, kind but distracted. I need to show you something. It's about Vanessa Moore. It's really important. A hand landed on her shoulder, firm. She's just a little nervous. Officer, came a polished voice behind her. The man who'd grabbed her wore a black suit, earpiece tucked in his collar. She's the bride's stepdaughter, just a little pre-wedding anxiety. Right. He looked at her like a warning with a smile attached. Emily stepped back, eyes on the officer, but the moment had slipped. The man nodded kindly and said, Enjoy the night, kid. Emily walked away in silence, fury bubbling in her throat. She had the evidence. She had the names, the pictures, the audio. But here, in this cathedral of adult belief, no one wanted truth from a child. She returned to the rehearsal hall. Outside the bridal preparation room, voices filtered through thin walls, Vanessa's, but not the sweet, airy voice she used in public. No change of plan, she said sharply into her phone. We end it tomorrow. I want that money cleared by Tuesday. I don't care if you have to use the Cayman account. Her voice dropped, almost a whisper. And make sure the documents are burned. I don't want any trail. Emily stepped back, heart racing. She didn't need more proof. She needed someone to believe what she already knew, back in the guest lounge assigned to her. Emily double-checked the zipper of her backpack. Her fingers were trembling now, not from fear, but from knowing how close the storm was. She sat on the floor and pulled out the pouch where the microSD had been clipped in a small black sleeve. Empty. She unzipped every compartment, pulled every notebook, shook the pages of her planner. Gone. Her breath shortened. She knelt beside the bed, pulled out her spare drive from under the lining. Still there. But it didn't matter. Someone had gone through her bag, someone who knew exactly what to take. Emily pressed her back against the wall, listening to the distant echo of rehearsed vows and laughter down the hall. It didn't sound like joy anymore. She didn't cry. She reached for her phone, because now there wasn't time to convince, only time to stop what came next. The morning air around the Fairmont Hotel was thick with anticipation. Bellboys zipped luggage across polished floors. Florists carried white roses in glass vases toward the ballroom. Everything was poised for perfection. But Emily, walking through the marble lobby in a blue cardigan 2 sizes too big, wasn't thinking about centerpieces or aisle runners. She clutched a folded sheet of paper creased from her hands, edges softened by the night's tension. The last surviving printout of the insurance policy, its text sharp in contrast to the blur of adult denial she had faced for days. Her palms were damp. She had rehearsed what to say, over and over, but each step toward the concierge desk made her breath shorter. Behind the front desk stood Thomas Webb, gray suit, trimmed beard, glasses that made him look like someone who never missed a detail. She remembered him from the funeral, standing quietly behind her mother's casket, eyes kind but distant. Her mom had called him Tommy once, in a story about college nights and burnt spaghetti. That was enough. She waited until a couple checked out, then stepped forward. Mr. Webb. Her voice barely cut through the lobby music. He glanced down, professional and warm. Yes, young lady, I think. I need your help, just between us. Something in her tone slowed his hands. He tilted his head, curious but careful. All right. What's on your mind? She unfolded the paper and handed it to him. It's about Vanessa, my dad's fiancée. I don't think she is who she says she is. He took the sheet, eyes scanning the bold title insurance policy. James Carter. Beneficiary Vanessa Moore. Payout $50,000. He let out a small breath, almost a chuckle. Emily, this looks serious. Where did you... I found it, she said quickly. And there's more. Photos. Her real name might be Vanessa Hill. She used to be my tutor. She's been around longer than anyone realized. Webb's expression shifted. Amusement turned to concern. He studied the page again, but then lifted his eyes not at the paper, but at her. Really looked. You're not making this up, he said quietly. Emily shook her head. No one's listening. My dad thinks I'm acting out. My teacher sent me to the principal because of a drawing. I even tried to tell a police officer yesterday. He told me to stay close to the bridesmaids. Webb stepped back from the desk. Come with me. He led her to a small side room, normally used for VIP check-ins. It was quiet, away from the hum. He motioned for her to sit. Start from the beginning, he said. All of it. So she did. Brandon in the black Lexus. The fake names. The envelope in the Italian restaurant, the missing USB, her mom's bear, the whisper in the cathedral. She spoke fast, barely pausing, but never once stumbling. Webb didn't interrupt. He leaned in, elbows on his knees, hands clasped together not in pity, but attention. She hadn't realized how badly she needed that. When she finished, her voice small and raw. He nodded once and leaned back. 3 years ago, he began. I managed an anniversary dinner here, small group, second floor balcony. There was a woman looked like Vanessa, but she went by Julia Kensington. She claimed she worked in antique art brokerage, said her husband was an investor from Dallas. That man was Brandon. I remember him, slick smile, too slick. Emily's lips parted. I ran their name through our event system later. No trace. The card was under a different agency. Didn't think much at the time, but now... He rubbed his chin. Silence stretched between them. Finally, he folded the insurance printout and slipped it into his jacket. I can't promise anything, Emily, but if you're right, someone's going to get hurt. We'll need to act tonight. Emily didn't breathe. Webb stood and placed a hand gently on her shoulder. Let me handle the adults. You just stay safe. She nodded, heart thudding, and followed him out. But something in her gut told her the real danger hadn't started yet. The chandeliers above her blinked in gold, but her eyes were already looking past them, searching for the storm behind the glass. The light inside the bridal suite at the Fairmont was warm, but heavy, the kind that made even the softest fabrics seem stiff. Emily sat quietly in a velvet armchair near the window, her feet not quite touching the floor. Around her, adult voices drifted like perfume light, surface level, uninterested in anything real. The women buzzed with excitement, glasses of champagne in hand, complimenting one another's dresses, laughing at inside jokes Emily wasn't meant to understand. She wasn't addressed, she wasn't looked at, she was just there. Vanessa sat in front of a large makeup mirror, her robe barely closed, hair pinned up in large curls as the stylist worked around her. Her hands moved with a rhythm Emily had come to memorize, thumb tapping, screen flickering, text after text on a second phone, one not seen until this morning. Emily watched everything, watched the way Vanessa's eyes darted up to check who was near, watched the way her lips tightened whenever she got a message. The bride-to-be wasn't nervous. She was calculating. James walked in through the suite door in full tuxedo. He looked sharp, polished. More than that, he looked proud. Seeing his daughter, he grinned, stepping toward her. "You nervous kiddo?" he asked softly, crouching to her eye level. His voice was warm, as if nothing had changed, as if the day was just as it should be. Emily didn't speak. She shook her head once, her eyes steady not on him, but on Vanessa's hands in the mirror. The older woman had paused her texting to sip water, then started again. James followed his daughter's gaze, but didn't ask. "You look beautiful," he said instead, brushing a lock of hair from her face. Then he stood and turned away, already pulled into a conversation with one of the groomsmen entering behind him. The door closed again, and Vanessa's eyes met Emily's in the mirror. It was brief, not long enough for anyone else to notice, but it landed like a weight. Vanessa's gaze wasn't flustered or caught off guard, it was piercing. A question, a warning, and something more, something Emily couldn't name, but felt all the way into her bones. Emily blinked, but didn't look away. In that second, something passed between them. Neither smiled, neither moved. "Can someone bring me my veil?" Vanessa called lightly, breaking the moment. One of the bridesmaids jumped to her feet. Emily rose from her chair and drifted to the back corner of the room, pretending to look through a rack of pale blue bridesmaid dresses. Her heart was pounding again, but her face stayed blank. She kept her posture soft, forgettable. Out of sight, but not out of mind. Behind her, the phone buzzed again, and then Vanessa whispered, barely above the hum of hairdryers and laughter. "No change of plan. We end it tomorrow. I want that money cleared by Tuesday." Emily froze. Her breath caught in her throat, shoulders tight. She didn't dare turn around. She stared at the silk of a hanging dress, fingers twitching at her sides. The room went quiet for a moment, then burst into new chatter. Music came on. Someone poured more champagne. Emily moved slowly to the dressing table by the window. The antique mirror was angled just enough. Through its warped reflection, she saw Vanessa set her phone down near a makeup brush. The screen lit up again with a message. Emily squinted. "Only a second. It's done. The brakes are ready." Her stomach turned. Her ears rang. She didn't breathe. The room felt miles away. She looked into the mirror and caught her own face pale, eyes wide, mouth parted like she'd forgotten how to speak. Then, slowly, deliberately, Vanessa picked up the phone and tucked it beneath a fold in her wedding dress. The motion was graceful, like everything she did. Emily stepped back, heart thudding so loud she thought someone would hear it. No one did. They were all smiling. And outside, the city kept breathing, unaware. She didn't look back, but she knew Vanessa was watching her leave. The small side room behind the altar hadn't changed much. Dust settled on the old piano bench where her mother once sat, and the faint smell of polished wood and aging stone clung to the air. Emily closed the door behind her, the soft click like a seal over everything outside the guests arriving, the florists buzzing, the music rehearsing on repeat. She stood still for a long moment. On the bench lay a faded sheet of music, yellowing at the edges, the notes handwritten in blue ink, Nocturne for Emily. Her mother's script. The curl in the E matched the one in her old birthday cards. Emily reached out and traced the paper without lifting it, as though touching too firmly would shatter what was left. The silence in the room thickened. No voices, no shoes tapping the marble floor. Just her breathing and her heart, louder than she liked. Then it came. Tears. Not the sharp, angry kind she'd pushed back for weeks. These were quiet, sudden. They rolled without warning, like the tide creeping up on your ankles when you stop paying attention. She didn't fight them. She sat down, rested both hands on her knees, and let her chin fall forward. For the first time since her mother died, Emily cried like she meant it. Not the child performance of grief people expect, but the raw, silent ache of someone who knew what it was to lose and be left with questions. She looked up at the mirror across from the piano. It was full of smudges, the kind you can only see when the sun hits just right. Her reflection stared back, not quite the same girl who hid file folders inside teddy bears, who snuck through corridors with camera phones. What she saw now had a stillness. The eyes were clearer, tired. Yes, but sharper. Like she'd walked through fog and finally understood she wasn't lost. She'd just been looking too far ahead. And then it landed, soft as breath. They didn't believe her, not because they were blind, not because they didn't care, but because the truth she carried didn't fit the story they'd already written. Adults didn't expect children to notice silence between words. They didn't think kids could read fear in a twitching smile. And they certainly never imagined a girl barely tall enough to reach the piano lid would be the only one to see through a woman like Vanessa Moore. But she had, and now she had to act like it. She pulled her phone from the side pocket of her dress, hands still shaky. She opened the email app. Thomas Webb had given her a direct line, and this time, she used it. The backup files had taken hours to compile after the original flash drive vanished from her backpack. But she'd learned. This time, she uploaded everything to cloud storage, copied the link into the body of the email, and typed 3 words in the subject line, "For your eyes." Her thumb hovered, just 1 beat. Then she pressed send. It wasn't courage exactly. It was conviction. Emily stood, wiped her cheeks with the back of her hand. She didn't fix her hair, didn't check her face. This wasn't the kind of moment that needed neatness. It needed movement. She opened the door. The church had grown louder. More voices in the foyer. The sharp click of dress shoes on tile. Somewhere down the hall, a brass quartet rehearsed the wedding processional. Emily moved quickly, hugging the wall, staying out of sight. She reached the corner window just in time to see the limousine pull up to the curb. A deep black sedan, the kind James Carter always preferred: conservative, clean, discreet. The driver stepped out, walking around to the rear passenger door with smooth precision. Inside the church, everything moved toward celebration. Outside, something else took shape. She stared at the car. Her breath caught. This was it. Vanessa's text from earlier wasn't just a bluff. The one she saw reflected in the dressing mirror. "It's done. The brakes are ready." Emily gripped the railing of the stairwell, knuckles white. If she waited any longer, James might walk straight into that car and never reach the altar, never say the vows, never leave the cathedral. Her shoes echoed down the steps as she moved. Not running yet, but close. She knew now. This was the moment. She didn't need more evidence. She needed someone to believe before it was too late. She pushed the door open and stepped into the light, just as the driver reached for the handle. The towering arches of Grace Cathedral framed the early afternoon light like a solemn painting. Every detail of the wedding had been executed to perfection, the silk ribbons hanging from the pews, the slow hush as the guests took their seats, the delicate scent of lilies drifting in from arrangements that flanked the aisle. The pipe organ thundered gently to life, notes rising like waves before the ceremony began. James Carter stood at the front, his tuxedo sharp, his jaw set with both resolve and something softer, something nostalgic. Behind him, the officiant adjusted his glasses. Photographers in discreet black crouched by the altar, ready. Then the doors opened. Vanessa entered like a vision carved out of marble and light. Her gown shimmered just enough to catch the eye without begging for it. Her smile was measured, demure yet triumphant. She moved with the grace of someone who had rehearsed not just the walk, but the feeling of being worshipped. The guests turned, admiring, whispering. No one noticed the tension in Emily's shoulders. She sat in the third row, hands clenched around a stuffed bear with a loose seam down its back. Not the original one that had been torn apart. This one she'd repacked, restitched herself the night before, and hidden what mattered most inside. Vanessa reached halfway down the aisle. Emily stood. The guests barely reacted. She was just a child after all. The bride's soon-to-be stepdaughter. A flower girl who changed her mind. Maybe. But then she stepped out of her row and into the aisle directly between Vanessa and James. Her voice trembled, but it rose clear. That woman is lying. Silence fell like snow. James's brow creased, confused, but not yet angry. The officiant looked toward a planner off stage, unsure if this was part of some surprise. Vanessa froze in place, but her eyes sharpened instantly, like glass cracking behind a portrait. Emily kept walking. Each step was slow, deliberate. The bear in her arms no longer looked like a toy. It looked like a decision. She's not who she says she is. Emily continued, her voice steadier now, bouncing against the stained glass. This isn't just a wedding. It's a trap. A ripple went through the room. Someone gasped. Someone else whispered her name. James took a step forward. Emily. She stopped at the altar steps and turned, facing the officiant directly. Her eyes didn't waver. I know how this looks. I know I'm just a kid, but you need to check what I'm giving you before this goes any further. She reached into the back of the bear and pulled out a small flash drive. The seam split cleanly, thread tugging loose under pressure. The symbolism wasn't lost on anyone, something soft, giving way to something hard. Truth sewn into something no one thought to question. She held out the drive to the officiant. He didn't move. James looked around, confused, caught between disbelief and dawning fear. Vanessa took another step forward, voice calm but tight. This is absurd. I think she's overwhelmed. The wedding has been hard on everyone, especially Emily's voice cut through hers. The man in those files is Brandon Reed, not your business partner, not some investor from Dallas, and her name isn't Vanessa Moore. It's Hill. She's done this before. I have proof. Still, no one moved. And yet, something was shifting in the air. The musicians had stopped playing. The photographers had lowered their cameras. Even the children sitting on the front pews had gone still. A cathedral built for eternity was now holding its breath for a child with a bear. Emily extended the flash drive higher. Please, just look, before it's too late. Her hand shook now, but her eyes, those held. Finally. The officiant stepped forward. He took the flash drive, looked down at it like it was something ancient and burning. Vanessa didn't move. Her smile was gone. James looked at his daughter, and in that silence, for one suspended moment, the entire world tilted. He didn't say her name, but she saw it in his face. Something had begun to break. The silence inside Grace Cathedral had weight. It pressed down on every shoulder, every breath, every pair of widened eyes. The sound of Emily's final words, "Check this before you continue," still seemed to hang in the air, even after her hand dropped back to her side. Muxu McCallan, old and deliberate, stood still for a long moment, the small flash drive cradled in his palm like it might burn through. His face was unreadable, but something flickered behind his lenses, some quiet memory, perhaps, of his own daughter once telling a hard truth nobody believed. He nodded to the AV technician at the back of the nave, a young man in a headset, startled, hurried over. The plug clicked into place. The projection screen behind the altar meant to display the vows, the blessing. The first kiss came to life with a faint blue glow. People turned. Vanessa didn't. She stood frozen halfway up the aisle, bouquet still in hand, spine rigid beneath the satin of her gown. But her knuckles had gone pale. James glanced at her, then at Emily, then at the screen. He hadn't moved from the altar. The first image appeared. Vanessa, same smile, same eyes, but not in a bridal gown, in a black coat, standing with Brandon Reed outside a condo in Manhattan, arms linked. The date stamp in the corner said 2021. Another slide, same woman, different name on a building directory behind her, Vanessa Hale. Then another in Austin, with Brandon again, laughing under a street lamp. The room began to stir. Murmurs rippled like wind across a wheat field. The next file played, a short video clip from a diner's security camera. Vanessa slid an envelope across the table to Brandon. He kissed her cheek. The audio buzzed to life, grainy, but clear enough. Brandon's voice. "Once the paperwork's through, we go quiet for 6 months. Then Vanessa's, 'He won't see it coming.' They never do." A woman gasped audibly. Someone else cursed under their breath. But it wasn't over. The last slide flashed onto the screen. A scanned PDF. Insurance policy. Policyholder James Carter. Beneficiary Vanessa Moore. Payout $50,000. The words landed like fists in the chest of the room. You could feel the shift, the guests no longer whispering, but reacting. Hands went to mouths. Friends of James leaned forward. A board member of Carter Holdings stood up in his pew, staring in disbelief. The illusion had shattered. And still, Vanessa hadn't moved. Her veil trembled slightly. Her hands were shaking now. Her eyes flicked once toward the nearest exit. Emily saw it. So did James. "You planned it," James said, not loudly, but the quiet made it louder. "From the start." Vanessa turned. Her face was pale, but her posture remained poised. "This isn't what it looks like." "It never is," someone muttered from the crowd, and then she ran. She dropped the bouquet first, then grabbed the front of her gown, tore the hem loose with a brutal tug, and sprinted up the aisle toward the grand cathedral doors. The veil tore free, fluttering behind her like a ghost. Her heels clattered against the tile, echoing like gunshots, but she didn't make it far. 2 uniformed officers stepped in from either side of the arched doorway. Officer Martinez, eyes calm behind aviators, reached out. Vanessa stumbled straight into his arms. The other officer flanked her, firm but measured. There were no screams, no fight, only the sound of cameras clicking, guests recording, whispers turning to phones, turning to posts, turning into the first wave of scandal. Inside. James turned to Emily. Their eyes met. She didn't say anything. She didn't need to. He looked at her like he was seeing her for the first time. Outside the cathedral, chaos bloomed like wildfire. Reporters shouted, flashes burst against stone, and camera lenses tracked every movement as officers led Vanessa out in handcuffs. She kept her head down, her veil tangled in one wrist, the folds of her wedding gown dragging across the sidewalk like a broken promise. Somewhere in the blur, someone cried out her name. She didn't flinch. Inside, it was eerily still. The last guests were standing, stunned, the orchestra frozen mid-page. A flower girl sniffled. One of the groomsmen looked away, ashamed, as if it were him being walked out. But at the front of the sanctuary, James Carter stood alone. He hadn't moved since the last image faded from the screen. His right hand opened slowly. The wedding band slid from his palm, dropped with a metallic ring onto the marble beneath his feet. The sound echoed in the vaulted ceiling like a question no one knew how to answer. Emily sat at the back pew, the gnarled seams of the teddy bear pressed to her chest. Her eyes were dry. There were no tears now. She'd run out of those somewhere between disbelief and determination. In her lap was the silence of someone who had been told she was wrong too many times, and now had nothing left to prove. Then came the shift. A woman stepped inside from the side corridor, flashing a badge at the remaining officers. Special Agent Nora Beale. Her presence didn't command the room. She didn't need it to. She carried the gravity of someone who had been following shadows for years. She walked straight up to the altar, her eyes scanning for James, then Emily. "I'm here for the girl," she said softly to one of the ushers. "She's not in trouble. She's the missing piece." James turned then. He didn't look toward the cameras or his guests, or even the pulpit where the ceremony had collapsed. He looked at his daughter. He walked, slow and quiet, toward the pew where Emily sat. She didn't look up right away. When he sat beside her, she still clung to the bear, still stared straight ahead. "I didn't listen," he said. Not a question, not even a regret, just truth. Emily's jaw clenched. Her fingers loosened slightly. "I wanted to believe something easy," he continued, "because I was tired of looking at the hard things." Her shoulders trembled once, just enough for him to notice. But she didn't speak. Not yet. Outside, a siren passed. The news vans had multiplied. Nora Beale watched from a distance, giving the two space she knew they needed. There was no manual for this kind of breach father to daughter, lie to truth, love to silence. Then the briefing began. A quiet voice in a suit approached Nora. He handed her a phone. She answered, listened, nodded once. She walked back to the pews, her tone clipped but controlled. "We've confirmed Brandon Reed has vanished," she said. "He left his hotel room around 4 a.m. Hasn't used credit cards since. We believe he's trying to leave the state before nightfall." The words dropped like stones into the space between them. James straightened. "What do you need?" Nora looked at Emily. "Your daughter gave us something we couldn't get in 3 years. She knows his pattern, the way he thinks." Emily finally looked up. She wasn't scared. She looked like someone who had watched the tide turn, then realized the storm hadn't finished yet. She nodded once, slow and certain, like the girl in the mirror was gone for good. The courtroom inside the San Francisco Federal Building didn't feel like a place for a child. The ceilings loomed, cold and silent. Light streamed through high rectangular windows, casting long shadows across the wooden floor. It was a temporary setup, called into action for urgency, but everything inside it felt heavy final. Emily Carter stood beside the witness stand, her small hand resting on the rail. She wasn't wearing her usual sneakers. Someone, probably Thomas Webb, had handed her a pair of polished flats and a gray cardigan that didn't quite fit, but she stood tall. Not a sound rippled through the room as the judge nodded gently toward her. "Do you swear to tell the truth?" the clerk asked. She looked up, her voice clear. Yes. No one had prepared her for this. No script. No lawyer walking her through what to say. Just a girl, a chair, and the weight of something bigger than herself pressing against the walls. The prosecutor began, but his questions were soft. "Emily, can you tell the court what made you suspicious?" She nodded. Her voice didn't shake. "At first, it was little things," she said. She didn't know how to pronounce the name of Dad's law firm, even though she'd been dating him for months. She wore perfume my mom was allergic to. She asked me questions she already knew the answers to. Laughter didn't come. It wasn't that kind of courtroom, but heads began to tilt, eyebrows to rise. I started keeping notes. She continued. Then photos, recordings. She always used a second phone after dinner. She met with Brandon Reed 4 times. She said he was her cousin. He's not... The judge sat forward slightly. Across the room, Vanessa Hill, no longer in ivory satin, but a prison jumpsuit, glared at Emily, eyes burning with something that was no longer control. She used fake names. Emily went on. In Dallas, in Seattle. And she tried to change our honeymoon flight without telling my dad. That was when the room shifted. James sat in the front row now, his head down. He had heard the facts before, in pieces, behind closed doors. But here, under oath, the story became something else. It became public. The prosecutor handed the judge a packet of photographs. Emily had annotated them herself. Little arrows, names, dates written in the careful handwriting of someone still learning cursive. Then came the twist. The defense attorney stood, not combative, almost weary. Ms. Hill would like to make a voluntary statement, he said. The judge glanced at him, then at the courtroom, nodded once. Vanessa stood. Her voice was quiet, bitter, and twisted at the edges. Your Honor, I didn't come up with this alone. There was a pause. Everyone leaned in just a little. Years ago, Emily's mother, Rebecca, approached me. She worked with my sister at a charity board. She suspected something about Brandon. She had questions. She got too close. He found out. A hush fell like a dropped curtain. I told her to stop. Vanessa continued. He said if I didn't help, he'd take both of us down. Emily stared at her. Her grip tightened on the rail, knuckles white. The judge leaned forward. Are you saying Emily's mother was threatened by Mr. Reed? Vanessa nodded slowly. She tried to report it once, but it got buried. She died before she could try again. A circle closed silently. All this time, Emily had walked through fire thinking she was alone. But the suspicion, the fear, it hadn't started with her. It had started with her mother. The prosecutor recovered first. He stepped back, adjusting his tie. We'll submit that information to the FBI. The judge's voice returned, crisp and final. This court finds cause for felony-level charges against the defendant, including conspiracy to commit fraud, attempted vehicular homicide, and interstate deception using false identities. He paused, letting the room settle. Ms. Hill will remain in federal custody. Vanessa's face crumpled not in shock, but in acceptance, as if something inside her had finally split. The gavel didn't fall. Not yet. Emily stepped down slowly, walking past rows of adults who no longer saw a little girl, but something else entirely. She passed her father. He didn't speak, but he stood when she walked by, and when she reached the door, she glanced back just once and saw that he had followed. The sky over Rivera Community Arts Center was overcast, but calm, the kind of pale gray that softened the edges of everything it touched. A fresh coat of paint now covered the building's old brick walls, but the soul of the place, its memory lingered. Inside, the air smelled faintly of citrus wood polish and paper programs, folded neatly on every seat. The Carter Foundation banner hung above the small stage. Below it, rows of folding chairs had been filled early local families, old colleagues of James Carter, reporters with notepads, and the quiet ones who had heard something in this story that stayed with them. It wasn't just a foundation launch, it was an act of return. James stood at the podium, his posture straighter than it had been in months, though the lines in his face had deepened. His voice, when it came, carried weight, but not performance. There was a time, he said, not too long ago, when I thought being a good father meant protecting my daughter from the world. Turns out, she was the one trying to protect me. He paused, fingers lightly resting on the edge of the lectern. The Carter Foundation isn't about second chances. It's about listening before the damage is done, in the front row. Emily sat beside Thomas Webb and Agent Nora Beale. Her hair had grown past her shoulders, a small barrette tucked neatly to the side. She wasn't in a dress today, just a soft flannel shirt, jeans, and the same old Gao bong that had once hidden a piece of truth. Its stitches had been mended, but the scar still showed. She didn't squirm. She didn't smile. She simply watched. After James stepped down, the MC approached the mic. Before we close, we'd like to invite the one person who truly made today possible to say a few words. Emily Carter. There was a gentle murmur through the room, a few heads turning, some unsure, others expectant. Emily didn't flinch. She rose slowly, walked up the steps without looking down, and took the mic with both hands. She didn't thank anyone. She didn't rehearse. She scanned the room. Her eyes settled on a group of young girls near the back, maybe 9 or 10 years old. One of them had her hand clasped tight around a toy keychain, the kind only a kid would carry into a grown-up space. Emily leaned in, voice firm but even. Always listen to the quiet ones. We're not always wrong. A beat. That was all. She stepped away. There was no cheer at first, just a wave of silence, thick and deep. Then, as if the room itself exhaled, the applause rose not loud, but full, like people clapping, not for a speech, but for something they hadn't known how to name until now. She didn't wait for more. Emily walked down the aisle slowly, her gao bong tucked under her arm, the sleeves of her flannel pushed halfway up. She moved past the chairs, past the cameras, past the looks of awe and respect. She didn't wave. At the door, she paused, letting the spring light fall across her face. The world outside wasn't fixed. Brandon Reed was still out there somewhere. Life hadn't wrapped itself up in a neat bow, but something in her had closed the loop. She stepped outside, head high, shoulders back, not like someone who had won, but like someone who had been seen. And this time, nobody stopped her. A teddy bear with a missing ear sat quietly on the shelf behind her, untouched for weeks. It didn't need to be held anymore. In a world so quick to speak, maybe the bravest thing is simply listening fully, without judgment. Some truths don't need defense, only a place to land. And some wounds don't heal by being fixed, but by being seen. What if all it took was one person, in the right moment, to believe what no one else would?